Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Build Value by Choice. I'm your host, Nana Bonsu. I'm the president and CEO of Infinite Horizons Incorporated, where we have business owners scale the value of their business so that you can either exit on your own terms or they can pass it down to the next generation. This week, we are going to be talking about how the CEO of a major healthcare products company was able to scale up his business. And please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review, just so we know how we're doing and we can respond accordingly. Now on to today's guest. Our guest today is Ryan Margolin. Ryan Margolin is the CEO of Professional Hair Labs. He set out on his journey to help create the world-leading product in cosmetic bonding when his mother was poisoned by the harmful chemicals in the hair adhesive products commonly used in the industry. Inspired to keep the same thing from happening to anybody else, his family dove into the research and created the first hair care product free of harmful substances. Now, nearly 20 years later, Ryan is an international business leader and an entrepreneur who works in more than 15 different countries. There, he helps create sustainable services and products in industries full of subpar and even harmful options. With his expertise, he's been able to formulate strategies for success in multiple different industries, as well as dedication to people first. He has expanded his business tenfold and grown to become one of the 500 fastest growing companies in the US over the last 5 years, and has sold more than $50 million in product globally. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Thanks. I appreciate you having me, Nana, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, I know, like, the pre-interview conversation, I told you about how I was listening on some conversation among business owners about growing your business. Some people were of the view that, hey, if you grow your business too much, then you lose touch with customers, or it may be beyond your capacity to be able to manage your business, or your costs or expenses, go up. Before I get into, what are some of the lessons you've learned, and why that may or may not be true, can you tell us a little bit about, just a little bit deeper about the hair care products industry, and just to give us a little bit more about you and the healthcare industry, other than what I just mentioned in your bio?
Sure. Yeah. So we predominantly, the company started in the non-surgical hair replacement niche. So it was a very niche company, supplying a solution to individuals who suffered from hair loss, whether it be through hereditary means or health issues, such as, let's say, for example, if they had cancer and they were going through chemo and naturally their hair was lost. So our products provided a solution for those situations. And over the years, then we've developed not only our own product line further, but we've been able to expand our cosmetic offerings to a wider range of different categories, such as body care, skin care, and further, ranges of hair care as well. So it's the mission of the company. While it was based around safety, we've kind of aimed to take those same principles and methodologies and bring them deeper into the cosmetic space. The company was originally started in 1994 by my father, and it was started after my mother got chemical poisoning and she was forced into early retirement. And he sold the hair replacement studios that they had with the aims of creating a line for technicians and for hair wearers that was safe. So it's developed from there. From 94 till about 2008, 2009, it was hovering peaks and valleys in between 250 to 270 K a year business. So roughly average about 20 to 25,000 a month. And when we stripped the company back and looked at the simple things that we could do to improve the exposure of the products to the industry, over a very short period of time, the next 18 months saw us triple revenue. And then we knew we had validated the product and we realized exactly what we were missing. So we've used that information then to expand to different regions, different areas around the world, and ultimately also end up opening a European location to facilitate global distribution as well. So it's been a great journey, and that's really the bird's eye view of who we are and where we have come. So I'm looking forward to exploring some of that with you.
Awesome. Yeah, two questions just kind of popped off the top of my head right away. One was the ability to transfer from your dad to you, because a lot of the statistics for successful transition from first generation to second generation business owners, it's not very good. It's like 30% or something like that. So that's a good one I would like to explore with you in terms of the secrets behind the successful transfer. And then the second thing would be the supply chain and how how have you been able to navigate the current post-pandemic environment.
Yeah.
So let's start with the fact that you're able to transition from your dad to you, and what was the secret behind that? Because like I said, I mean, based on statistics that I've seen, it's usually not very high.
No,
Yeah.
no. And so I think it comes down to two things. When you're growing a company of any sort of magnitude, naturally, depending on different variables, the niche you're in or the industry, the profit levels, there's multiples of that value that are given towards evaluation of a company. So you're really left with one choice. I mean, it's, if you don't make the decisions that are required to, to protect it, you're either going to, one, give up most of it to, to revenue or IRS, or number two, you can be a little bit strategic about it and work on a succession plan. It's going to cost you on both ends if you have the right people who have the experience, but hiring experienced people to help you make that plan is really what's going to save you money in the long run. So that would be the first thing. You really have to get honest with the question is that, look, if you do nothing, it's going to be pretty bad. And if you do something, it's not going to be pleasant either, because it opens up a whole door of all other aspects of different conversations you have to have, probably conversations that you might have been avoiding for the last 10 years, but ultimately they have to happen. And there has to be a certain level of acceptance and understanding that it might be a little bit uncomfortable during the way, but when you have everyone with the same goal in mind, I think naturally, if you have a good communication line open and you are able to take an empathetic approach towards the collective of individuals involved, I think it goes a long way to navigating those waters. Look, succession planning is not easy, and especially, in our instance, you're looking at, my father, who had been involved in the industry for so many years, making a plan to essentially let it go. It's tough. And, I can understand how tough that is, but in order to continue his mission and his vision, you have to be in a position and be willing to make those choices.
Was there a particular moment that forced his hand, or did he just have some kind of internal epiphany, or was there some kind of external kind of prodding that happened?
So for us, there wasn't exactly a light bulb moment. I think it was a collective of experiences over a period of time that made him see the way this needed to go and the safe way to go about this. Because, look, ultimately, we undertake this journey, majority because, number one, we want to protect the future growth of the business. But number two, it's because we don't understand how it should be collectively put together. You can't simply just hand somebody something and that's it. So I think throughout, a process of 1.5 years, which it took us to get through this, I think there were certain situations where he realized from the legal advice we were given by our tax consultants who were helping us put in this structure that this transition was simply a monetary exchange and an ownership exchange. There was agreements put in place to ensure that, forever, for the rest of his life, he would be well looked after. So I think when you look at letting go, typically that's probably one of the key things that you have to deal with, because you're so used to being in control of your own path. And then when you make a change like this, it requires a different way of thinking, and that's tough, especially when you've been doing it for a certain way for so many years. So there wasn't a light bulb moment, but I think it was just a collective of experiences at the right times along the way that helped him become a lot more comfortable with how things were going.
And if for the people that haven't been there, what was the post succession like? Because there's life after the transition, and it's not all bad. But so what are people, business owners that may be a little bit skittish about, hey, this is my purpose. What's going to be my purpose? So, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I won't feel needed, and I won't have any friends. All my friends will still be in the business if I'm not, involved in it as actively as I was before.
So I think the beauty in that is it all comes down to the operating agreement that you put in place. An operating agreement can be essentially whatever you want it to be. So if you have an individual who's letting go, who's moving to a next phase of their life, and they're making a succession plan for their family, that future can look whatever way you want it to look, and as long as it's all in agreement, then there's no problem. So you can be as active or as not active in the business as you choose to be. For my father, it made more sense for him to be involved on a board level, in terms of decisions. So each week there would be a collective of information that would be discussed and reviewed with the board, and we move forward from that point. So for that's enough for my dad. But for somebody else, it might not be enough. They may need to be involved in the day-to-day in a different capacity. So it's about figuring that out, and it just means a lot of different things for different people.
Now, did you have any other family members in the business, or was it just you and your dad?
No, I have two brothers. I have a brother, Daryl, who's here with me in Europe, and then my brother David, who is in the US. So collectively, the three of us run the company, and we set the future goals and the visions and the directions.
Okay. All right. No, this is a successful story, because a lot of times when you have family dynamics, sometimes it can be kind of complex. And especially if some are involved and some are not involved, but in this case, it doesn't look like we have that issue.
No, and we could have, but I think there's two things that we do very well. We communicate well, and we have empathy, which means that we have the ability to put ourselves in each other's shoes in times where we may not be able to see all the time the other perspective. So in times where there might be some sticking points, everyone realizes that we just need to stop. We need to let the conversation breathe a little bit, and we'll come back to it. So I think having just an open mind when it comes to the running of a company is absolutely essential. And I think that's why we avoid most of the heavy issues, because we deal with them before they become monster issues.
Yeah. What do you think? What did you stand to lose on? How much money? Because you had mentioned something about the amount of money that you invest in getting the right succession plan in place pales in comparison to what you could lose in the end if you don't have the right structure and things in place. What would you say the ratio is like?
Well, let's put it this way: a couple of years ago, if we hadn't taken the journey and done what we did, we would have been on the hook for probably the bones of about $30 million. And that wasn't an option for us, because when something like that hits, you've got two options. You've got a payment plan, with the different governing bodies, IRS or revenue, whatever it may be, or you have to liquidate assets. And in order for us to liquidate assets means that the company would take a hit. And what's the point in committing to doing something that's going to impact people's lives if you're just going to turn around and allow a large percentage of it to be taken from you in the end? It's just like, you don't have to do that. And if you're just, like, we can't take, here's the thing, we can't take it all with us. So what do? Do you let your ego override your ability to be a smarter individual and say, listen, this is a succession plan, and that's exactly what it means. It's the ability to move it on to future generations. And I'm sure at some point my father looked at it like, my grandkids won't see any of the benefit from what we're doing now if I don't do something like this, and that's typically the way it works.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yep. So that, essentially it was like maybe, investing like maybe 1% of that or 10% of that, to save yourself 30 million is,
exactly. And you know what, if you get people who are good at what they do and are able to base it off of even past structures that they put in place that they know have worked. Like, for example, when you make changes like that, naturally, you have to respect the fact that, at some point you're going to have to answer something, to the IRS or to revenue, whoever it's going to be. But if you've got, a good team with you that have faced these challenges before, and they put in structures that have stood up against these queries, you're in a good place. And that is going to cost you money, but it's pennies in comparison to what it could potentially cost you.
So who was, besides your tax attorney, who else was involved in your advisory team?
Yeah, so we have quite a few people. So we have a board, which is involved with multiple people, but we also have operational consultants. We have digital consultants. We have a good solid advisory team around us that are helping us navigate the waters in times where we're a little bit unsure. Look, we work, for example, one of the advisors we work with was heavily involved in the communications business for many years. And he's got vast experience in rolling out different platforms and programs in different countries at the same time. So, where are you going to learn these things without getting the information for people who have experienced it before it? And that's one of been the key parts of our growth, is that, there's always times where we entered waters that make us uncomfortable because we don't know a whole lot about it. But as people, we're willing to learn, and then we go look for the people who can provide that to us. So right now we have roughly about 9 people on the advisory team. So it's working quite well for us.
Okay, so first be willing to learn and then go find the people that can help you learn.
Exactly. That's it. There's always somewhere or somebody that has learned from the growth pattern that you're on, and they have the information. You have to be open enough to find that person or people and lean on them for what they can provide to you.
I want to circle back to that in a bit, but first I wanted to make sure we touched on the global supply chain impact and how you guys have navigated that.
Yeah, that was at a period of time quite volatile for us, especially when COVID first hit. We were very fortunate because we had large buying powers for raw materials and ingredients. So when the tightening of the belts came and manufacturers of the raw materials shut down, or they had production issues, we were able to buy large quantities of what we needed to facilitate our ability to continue to produce. We saw it, fortunately for us, it never really impacted us any more than 3 weeks out, 2 or 3 weeks out. Whereas, we would have ordered materials, gotten them within 4 weeks, 6 weeks at most. But that pushed out to about 2 months then during COVID. So we were able to just buy what we needed in larger amounts and secure the materials. So it was a huge, I tell you, it was a huge learning curve for us, because it actually made us feel like, we were very exposed, because, what's the worst thing that you can do is turn around to a customer and say, listen, I can't give you this product because, we don't have the material, or even worse yet, we can't give you this product that we make for you, and it's your brand and your product. And they're like, well, that's not my problem. And they're right, it's not their problem. So we dodged a bullet there, and we patched the holes to make sure that we reviewed our kind of material flow policy to make sure that, look, we'd have to invest an extra 10% ahead of, weeks ahead of where we wanted to be to ensure that we wouldn't run out in the face of another round of a pandemic or anything that happens in the future. So that was a huge learning curve for us.
So one of the things, and I want to kind of delve into that a bit, because I think that's a key. This is a key kind of teachable moment. Back in the 9/11 timeframe, one of the reasons why, one of the case studies that at least that was touched upon in one of the business courses that I took was, for instance, Southwest Airlines was able to come out ahead of the airline industry because they had, bought oil into the future. And therefore, when 9/11 hit and oil prices, jacked up, and that nearly wiped out the whole airline industry, they had to go get like government subsidies and stuff like that. Because they had already purchased oil futures at a certain low price, they were able to keep their margins and sustain themselves. So it sounds to me that, maybe not quite, you didn't quite foresee the pandemic black swan event coming, but you may have had enough cash reserves to be able to, once it started happening, to be able to say, okay, normally we keep inventory for 3 weeks, but we're going to buy 2 months in advance and take a hit on our balance sheet because we're going to be reserving a lot of inventory just so we can weather the storm. what was that true? I mean, was it your ability to, navigate around, see, around the corners and also having enough, cash flow or cash reserve to be able to purchase? And what did that mean? And the third question is, what did that mean in terms of, keeping maybe too much inventory and taking a hit on your balance sheet, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was actually a good comparison you made there with Southwest Airlines, because it would have actually been similar to what we did. Now, I didn't know that's what they did until you just said it there, but that's exactly the kind of comparison that you could make there. It enabled us to allow us to keep prices consistent. And because we have the cash flow there, we always are quite reserved with our cash flow. We make sure for times like that, where there might be an economic downturn or whether there might be a shortage of something, that we have excess funds there to purchase larger quantities. Now, of course, we're carrying that in the balance sheet, but for us, we know that ultimately we will trade through that. And in fact, if it comes to a point where we're carrying too much, we start to create promotions then to blow some of that stock out and turn more. Whereas you might have a client that orders $5,000 worth of a specific product, we could turn around and we could say, listen, if you order that 5,000, now we can give you 1,000 free. So it allows us to get some of that stuff off of our sheet. But at the end of the day, I really think it just comes down to, you need to be, especially when you're in manufacturing, you need to be a little bit clever, because you're kind of battling against the unknown variables. You're carrying materials for your own brand in your own product line. You're carrying materials for private label customers or custom formula customers, and you want to carry enough to where they don't run short, but you don't want to obviously carry too much, because you're not remaining profitable in the line. So there is a fine line and a balance, and I suppose keeping a close eye on your cash flow is quite important, and trying to project it as far out as you can. 12 months to see, are there going to be any sticking points based upon seasonality, based upon previous history that of sale velocities of certain products and product types and categories. So there's a lot of moving parts within that, but look, I think again it comes down to having different perspectives and actual statistical data to work on is really what carries you through that. And I'll give you a prime example. When COVID hit, we in Ireland, we were deemed a non-essential service, so we were actually faced with closing our doors for 3 months. And to us, that wasn't an option, because if something like that happens, people end up losing their jobs. And to me, that's the first and foremost. We look at that first. So the team got together. Within 24 hours, we were like, okay, look, we know we can actually make hand sanitizer. Never had it in our line before. We know we have we have access to a large amount of alcohol because of our vendor relationships that we have. So we went straight away in 24 hours, bought a ton of it, and we started making hand sanitizer, and we were legally entitled to keep the doors open. And we started to build relationships around sanitizer products because they were in shortage. We were carrying those products on those raw materials on our balance sheet for some time. But it was that initial impact of being able to carry our doors open that allowed us to build relationships we never had before. And if we hadn't been in the position to have the cash reserves to do that, we would have been stuck, and we wouldn't have had a choice then, because really it was all about, at that time, if you got the cash to pay for it up front, you're going to get the stuff.
That's a great point. Another teachable moment, which is be ready to be able to adapt. And of course, you need the cash to be able to do that, but being able to adapt and pivot when these things happen is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that then brings me to this point, because I've seen, I had mentioned in the beginning of this conversation about, debates that have gone on about, hey, do I really want to grow more than I can handle? I imagine if you didn't have a certain size, you probably wouldn't have been able to pivot the way you did, probably. So what would you say about, in terms of size, right? The lessons that you've learned from scaling your business?
I think off the cuff, I think it comes down to, I suppose, making a decision of what you want for yourself. Because I mean, success or whatever way, whether it's professional or personal, it looks different for everyone. And I think it's asking yourself the question, well, what do you really want? If you have a product or service that is making a difference to people's lives, that mission motivates you to want to change as many lives as you can or contribute to as many lives as you can. So I think that naturally just stimulates the need to grow large and to grow as much as you can. But on the flip side, if you are solely focused on maintaining a close one-to-one relationship with your customers, naturally time becomes the bottleneck there. So there's an acceptance that you're going to have to grow to a certain level to make it manageable and maintainable, because you want to have that, you still want to have some sort of a personal life. So I really think it comes down to just asking yourself the question, look, what do you really want? If you want to grow and scale to a certain level, you're going to have to be willing to let go of things and sacrifice and compromise some of maybe the important parts of the business that you wanted to keep or you wanted your business to operate in. On the flip side, you commit to making it the way you want it and keeping it smaller and maintaining a healthy balance that you're happy with. Really, I don't think there's not a right or wrong. I think it really comes down to, look, as you grow, there's more challenges, more learning is needed. If you stay in the same place where you master it, it can be it could be quite a lucrative lifestyle for you, and you get the the buyback of the personal time that you want. Sometimes you see, when you're growing a business, it's like peaks and valleys. You become so inundated with tasks and the growth of the company, and you do a time study then, and you find out where where you're spending most of your time tactically, and then you hire people to fill those holes, and you move on to the next phase and you buy back some of your time. So it's like a constant circle. Whereas if you look at it the other way, really what it comes down to mastering your craft. So you invest X amount of time to become a master of what you do, and then you keep it at a certain level, and that's where you want it to stay. So again, I just don't think there's a right or wrong. I just think you have to be willing to accept the compromise and sacrifice for either or.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Now, when you were scaling, because one of the other concerns that business owners tend to have is, when you scale, your cost or your expenses go up. So how do you keep your cost or expenses, or how did you keep your cost or your expenses reasonable while you were scaling? And also the fact that you have to bring on additional talent and quote unquote the headaches that come with that and whatnot. So if you can touch on that would be great.
Yeah, I don't really even think there's much of a magic bullet there. I mean, every month we would look at our profitability and we choose to just reinvest some of that back into what the company needed. Look, I mean, naturally, if we're on a decline for 6 months where, we see ourselves down on a downward scale, obviously we have to make some decisions, but we're keeping consistent cash flow to manage those peaks and valleys. Some months you're going to have a higher revenue than others, but in those months where you have the higher revenue, you just put a bit more away. And then that starts to compound, and that allows you to do the bigger things. Like, for example, if you have to, invest a couple of million into new machinery, or, in our example, where we had to invest, a few million to acquire a new location to expand our operations. That's really how we manage it. We just looked at it month on month and just said, listen, look, we have, our profitability is X this month. We're going to put a larger portion away. And then if the profitability wasn't as heavy the month after that, we would scale it back and look at and keep it in direct proportion to the revenue generated.
So in terms of your growth, do you grow? I mean, obviously you grow into different markets. Is that your primary growth strategy, or do you grow also by creating additional products?
Both. So we would have about 30 odd products in our line with variations that would put us into about the 70 range, because there's different sizes. But we also have private label and custom formula accounts, but we're always adding new products to our catalog every single year. For example, this year we aim to have 50 new products to our catalog by the end of the year. So B2B companies could come in and say, listen, this is the type of product I'm looking for. That's great. We have it here already, stabilized, tested. And if you want to make some alterations to it, we can do it without slowing down the process. So it is about, from a product perspective, you always have to be redeveloping products and developing new types of products, and, kind of pushing I suppose, the boundaries of cosmetic innovation and what we do. For example, we're experimenting at the moment with, say, snail secretion or bee poison, to try to create different cosmetic types and seeing how they perform. We commonly do studies internally and externally, which give us the information we need as to whether the research and development we're doing is something we should be pursuing or whether it's likely not going to work. And I think that's the beauty about where we are, especially in Ireland, is that the Irish government heavily support R&D, especially from American companies or multinational companies. So we have a really good thing going there, where a lot of the credits that we would get for R&D research can be pumped right back into the company, because some of it is covered, at the end of the year when we owe our corporation taxes, we get some of those credits that are taken off of that, and we can reinvest that back into the company then.
Being it just kind of triggers something. Being in having a location in Europe, how does that impact the whole different regulations like GDPR, the general data privacy regulation things, how you have to kind of adapt to that, and also any kind of foreign exchange kind of fluctuations?
Yeah, so obviously with our location in Ireland, we don't really deal with foreign exchange too much, apart from when the transition comes. Like, our pricing is in euros, and whatever that looks like on the other side, it is what it is. And are there times where that might dictate the relationship of being able to do business with other companies? Sometimes it is depending on where they're at with the currency exchange rate, sometimes that does actually impact it. But in the two countries, US and Ireland, we operate solely in USD and euros. And we make sure that obviously we keep our costs stable then, because we know the money we're getting in is exactly in the currency we need to operate in. So we're not really ever exposed too much. I think the only downside to it is, depending on whatever part of the world we're trying to develop, sometimes it can be a challenge. It depends on where the economy is at, really. For example, look, we have new relationships that we're building in Dubai at the moment, in UAE. There was a time a year ago where that was a bit of a challenge due to the exchange rates, but now we're finding it a little bit more beneficial on the euro side because of the alignment. So it's peaks again. It's like everything. There's peaks and valleys and everything, and it's just adapting to those variables and realizing that, look, you might not be able to develop it right there in the moment, but there will be an opportunity. So you just have to be a bit patient.
What about the GDPR? Are you affected by the different regulation?
No, we just make sure that we're adhering to what we need to adhere to. I wouldn't say we're affected by it. Look, and to be honest, we don't typically exchange information outside of the scope of where we need to. So, for example, the information that we acquire through, say, our Irish operation in Europe remains as part of that in an isolated environment, and the same with the US. So there's no real crossover. So we haven't come into any issues with that.
And how do you protect your IP in the different geographic locations?
Well, one of the key things that we had to ask ourselves over the last couple of years was, out of where we operate, where is the best place for us to hold our IP? And we decided that was going to be in Ireland. The IP laws in Ireland are extremely strong, and they're extremely enforceable. So all of the IP submissions that we've done over the last, say, 3 years have all been through the Irish company, and that's where we decided was best. We do have other IP rights in different countries through, US companies and stuff. And look, for right now, it's perfectly fine. But long term, the transition will eventually be all rights are obtained here and held here.
Awesome. Any final tips that you have for owners who are looking to scale their business?
Yeah, I just think, as a business owner, you have to be adaptable and you have to be flexible. And in times where it becomes unknown territory, it's great to have the right circle of people around you, because look, at the very beginning, naturally you have to invest in yourself. There's a bit of pain in that, because you have to pay money that you probably don't really have to get a goal or a result that might not happen immediately. But I just think if you stay focused on the fact that you don't need to know everything, you just have to have a good circle of people who do know more than you, and that's how things develop, and that's how you learn more. And just make sure that the people surrounded, around you on a daily basis are people that are just filling you with positivity and encouragement, because you could very easily fall into the comparison trap. And when you have a relationship around you from a business perspective where you're always looking over the fence at what somebody else has, or the success they have or what they've achieved, you're leaving that in the hands of potentially someone who can leverage that to make you feel less than. You want people in your circle who make you feel more than, make you feel like, they're there for you and they want to see you do the best that you can. So that, I think, as you're growing, that's one of the key things. Your circle is a key part of it.
That's a great tip. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. This was, very insightful. It kind of went back, pretty fast. I enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I hope the listeners enjoy it as well. How do people get in contact with you, or if they want to, learn more about what you do?
From a business perspective, Pro Hair Labs is on all major social media platforms: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. My hangout is on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to contact me, just search my name there, and you'll see me.
Yep, and we're gonna have all that information in the show notes as well. It's just
Great.
People can follow up on it. Well, thank you again, Ryan, and that's it for this week. Thank you, everyone, and to learn more about this conversation, we're gonna have a free webinar, a live webinar. So go ahead and sign up. We're gonna have the link in the show notes, and don't forget to leave us a review on any podcast platform that you listen to. Till next week, bye for now.